Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
We've come to another one of those sad moments in our show where we're doing a tribute episode. Actor Julian Sands had been missing since January of this year. He was known to be a mountain climber, avid outdoorsman, and he went missing and was found, finally confirmed that they had found his body just a couple weeks ago. So, one thing that we do to turn this around and make it into a positive is we find a horror movie that Julian Sands has been in. And of course there's a horror movie that Julian Sands has been in. It might be one of the most famous movies Julian Sands has ever been in.
To us. I mean, he's been in Oscar-nominated movies, so...
Who watches those? This was 1989's Warlock. You know, it is telling, though, that when you see all of the little blurbs about his death, Warlock, star of Warlock, and one other movie is always up there. It's kind of funny. I think basically this movie more or less put him in the public eye a little bit more so than he was before. It was one of his earlier films. He was in The Killing Fields in 1984. That movie was kind of a big deal.
I think that one was nominated for an Oscar, and then
A Room with a View.
A Room with a View, too.
Yeah.
He's just been in a million things. He's got, I think, 150 some credits, several things still, in post-production that will come out, posthumously for him. He's just been in a bazillion things. He's a really recognizable guy, very handsome, tall, blonde, sexy British accent. It seems to me he always played... Sinister isn't the right word. I don't know. I think he just seems very exotic isn't
creepy.
The right word. I don't know. He's just got an intensity to him, but that's not to say that he, I've seen him in a bunch of stuff where he seemed like he was nice and friendly. He was in Arachnophobia, which we've done, and
right.
He was, a good guy in that movie. Naive, about what he was doing or whatever, but a friendly guy. And he's just done all kinds of things. Schlocky movies, serious movies, action movies. He did stage work. His best friend is John Malkovich. He just seems like that kind of guy, an actor, But he also did some silly stuff, he was in the movie Vibes with Cyndi Lauper and Jeff Goldblum, and that is a stupid movie that I love.
Ages since I've seen that.
I watched it fairly recently. It's bad. It's terrible. It's hilarious. I love it. But he was Anne Rice's first pick to play Lestat when Interview with a Vampire was made. He didn't get it. Tom Cruise got it because they needed a big name. But that just is the kind of guy he is. When I read that he was her first choice, I was like, oh yeah, he would have been great as Lestat. So charismatic and enigmatic. He just had a really interesting aura about him. I liked him. He was a cool guy.
Yeah.
When I heard that he was missing and presumed dead because he was missing for a long time, it made me sad because he wasn't old. He probably would have been working for a long time, and it's just unfortunate. That said, as you mentioned, he died what he loved doing. It wasn't uncommon for him to go out on excursions by himself and just kind of be out in nature for extended periods of time. So it's one of those things you gotta go some way, you may as well go doing something you love.
Well, I think too, he even, it was even said that he knew that area well. This wasn't a guy who was kind of went off and did something foolish and should have known better. He knew that area well. He loved that area well. And I even saw an interview with him where he mentioned that mountain climbing was getting a little more dangerous. Interestingly enough. So he even recognized the risks and the increased risks of himself going out and doing it. And our hats off to him for his role in Warlock, which we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, honestly, hindsight is 20/20. If it had ever just occurred to me that one day we might be doing a tribute episode for Julian Sands, I would have saved Arachnophobia for it because I enjoy that movie so much. Even though he's not a huge character. I mean,
he's a very very small role in that.
He's prominent in the movie. Yeah, well, yeah, ish. But I really like him in that movie. That said, we have mentioned several times that we haven't done Warlock or any of the 3 Warlock movies. We haven't done any of them. So we were bound to get around to it eventually. And I remember these movies from when I was younger. I can't tell you why, but I just never got as into them as I got into other franchises, like even Wishmaster. Like, I was more into Wishmaster than I was into Warlock. But I did remember having fond memories of it, and then we went back to watch it. Man, it's not that good.
I can see, you know what, this is a very specific kind of movie that was made at this time, I think. The style of writing, sort of the beats and the characters, and right on down to the special effects. It all just falls right down a particular lane for me of a kind of movie that I recognize, that I remember enjoying so much when I was a kid at that time when it came out. And now looking back on it, there's a lot of it that seems rather quaint, a lot of it that also comes across as silly and even a little over the top when it's not really trying to be over the top, I think. Now, that said, I believe that when he read the script, and he'd been offered horror movies and things before, when he read the script, he initially thought it was going to be more of a black comedy. And that's what signed him on. I think it's arguable that there are elements of black comedy in this movie, but I don't think this movie plays as an intentional black comedy. I just don't think it ended up that way. But when I was a kid and we rented this from the video stores, and I have to believe that this did crazy business on VHS.
It had to.
Because it was available, multiple copies, every video store had it. It was prominently displayed, not even always right in the horror section. And I know my friends and I all knew it. We didn't know it beat by beat. It wasn't something that we were all sitting down and watching again and again and again. But I remember distinctly watching Warlock. I remember 2 scenes out of this movie very specifically that we talked about. We're like, oh my God, can you believe that? It was kind of unlike something we had seen before. And it felt darker and edgier for some reason. Probably because of how sinister and relentless Julian Sands' character is in this movie. And so, it was something a little different. I think it stood out, and that's what I remembered about it. And much like you, I hadn't seen it since. And going back in, obviously, I just told you how I felt about it, so. There's more.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're inclined to try to be nice about it. I didn't like it. I thought it was really bad. And Julian Sands was good in it, and I see the potential for him as a character, and the movie even, I see the potential. It's got a similar kind of vibe as Leprechaun and Wishmaster. It's in that lane.
I was thinking Wishmaster 100% when I was watching it, honestly.
It's in that lane, but it takes itself a little bit more seriously, I think, to a fault, because...
Right. Because it doesn't have the acting chops, it doesn't have the writing chops to back it up.
Right.
Yeah, or the budget.
I think it may have been better if they had leaned into the silliness a little more. Now, I'll be totally honest, we decided we were going to watch it, and I put it on, and I watched it, and I didn't like it for reasons that I will explain. I want to reiterate, Julian Sands is perfectly fine. He's
great in it.
He's great in it.
I think he's fantastic in it.
But the movie is kind of a turd. But as I was reading about it, and I read everything I could about Warlock, and I was like, well, let's check out Warlock 2. So I went to the IMDb page for Warlock 2, and I watched the trailer, and I was like, I think this is the Warlock that I remember.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was watching it on Tubi, where it streams for free if you haven't seen this movie or want to rewatch it. And, on those streaming services, when one movie ends, it just automatically
starts the next
one. And so it started Warlock 2. And so this was late last night. and I was drunk. But it came on. I was like, well, let's give it a shot. And the first 15 minutes of Warlock 2 is exponentially better than all of Warlock 1.
Well, that's good to know. We should have done Warlock 2, huh? Because he stars in that too.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, man, we missed an opportunity. We should have put out a poll, because I'm sure people probably know, people who are more familiar, who've seen it more recently than us. But Warlock 2 seems like it leans more into the corniness of it a little bit. Bigger effects, like the opening scene is a possessed woman giving birth, and then later Julian Sands is birthed from another possessed woman, and he comes out and he's like this little demon sperm looking thing, but then he immediately becomes full grown naked Julian Sands. We don't even get any naked Julian Sands in this movie. Man, I'm telling you, the second one
You really felt cheated, didn't you?
The second one's better. I'm an hour into it. I was watching it right up until you called me. Because I got tired and had to, I got about a half hour into it last night, and I was like, no, I gotta go to bed. But I got up this morning. I was watching it right until you called. It was good.
Oh, that's funny.
I'll tell you what, I suppose we'll get into plot. I took so few notes because so little happens. It's such a very basic plot point. But to me, I think that I pinpointed the reason why I think that this is a really bad movie. And that reason is Laurie Singer.
Yeah.
Laurie Singer is the female lead in this movie. The only other thing that I know her from, though I know she's done other things, the only other thing that I know her from is she was the love interest in Footloose, which is a movie that I love. In this movie, she is insufferable.
Yeah.
She is terrible. Now, to be fair, her character is awful. I don't know what whoever wrote this was thinking when they're like, okay, so we're going to have a female lead. We'll make her this pretty girl or whatever, and she's an awful person.
Yeah.
you just fucking hate her. She's terrible. And then Laurie Singer, again, I don't like to speak ill of people. I'm sure she's a lovely person in real life. She is terrible in this movie.
Yeah.
She is so bad.
She's so phoning it in.
I wish she had died. In the first scene. And then I was thinking about it, and I'm like, but Footloose is so good. I love Footloose. And then I was thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what? She's not very good in that movie either. She's just in a good movie.
There you go. You figured it out. Well, I also heard that as an actress on this movie, she was a bit insufferable as well, that they had a lot of difficulties with her, not the least of which was that she refused to wear a lot of the appliance makeup that they had created for her. Because a key plot point in this film is that she early on gets cursed by the Warlock and starts to age quickly. She's going to die in a few days.
She ages 20 years every day.
Yeah. And, you got to commit to that if you're going to do it. And sadly, all the makeup, the aging makeup they had for her, they had to scuttle simply because she would refuse to wear it. And so, they just kind of resorted to basic kind of makeup stuff, darkening her eyes and graying her hair and things. And
it looks dumb.
It does look dumb. It looks cheap, It looks
really stupid. And that's I know that our shtick is that we usually, we start at the beginning and work our way to the end, but there are things that I want to address here like that. It's just so fun. This movie is so dated.
Oh yeah.
In that in that they would have even put her in prosthetics to portray a 40-year-old.
Right.
I went out to dinner with my parents last night. We were talking about aging and how people look and stuff. And I said, I just watched this movie where this 20-year-old or 20-something-year-old woman is supposed to age to 40 and then age to 60. And when they age her to 60, it looks like they were trying to age her to 160.
Yeah.
She is an old crone.
1 foot in the grave.
She talks like this. It's so stupid. stupid.
She's having trouble with her knees. It's really stupid, yeah.
And it looks terrible. Like you said, the first time when she ages, well, not only does she age 20 years per day, but in an instant. Like, it's not like she progressively ages 20 years over the course of a day.
No, well, that would have been a pain in the ass.
Yeah, at some point during the day, she instantaneously ages 20 years. And
she gets like a pain in her stomach, and then it happens.
And each time it happens, she like wakes up with floor-length hair and super long fingernails. The first time, you're right, like they just kind of gave her dark circles under her eyes, made her really pale and washed out, put a stupid ugly wig on her. But then the second time, you know, you said she refused prosthetics or whatever. I don't know what they did to her face, but like they just made her look bloated and weird.
They were able to get a couple prosthetics on her for that last one, but that was it. They had much more they'd wanted to do, and presumably it would have been better. Who knows?
It was hilarious to me that was supposed to be 60. Like I'm literally in the car with my parents who are in their mid 60s and just look like normal people. Like they don't.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about it before, how the Golden Girls were supposed to be, you know, ladies at the twilight of their life at 50, and they look like, you know.
It's crazy how
silver white-haired old grannies.
It's wild.
Well, I think that distracted me, and I think that, you know, it affected the acting too, because then she doesn't act like a person who's 40. You know, she doesn't act like a person who's 60. So there's kind of a mismatch
40 doesn't act like anything. Like,
no, you know what I mean.
I know.
There's
I
know. They're trying to like visually portray some change in her.
I get it.
But that's not supported by any other kind of change, you know, in her, except at one point she's jogging after a train, and I think we're supposed to believe this is super hard for her at this horrible age of 40.
Because she's made up to look ridiculous. Now, this is when she's 60, I think, because it's right before.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, because like, when he puts a curse on her, like, he steals her bracelet. Like, the only way she can break the curse is if she gets her bracelet back. And so, the Warlock is on a frickin' train, and she's chasing the train. And she's supposed to be, like, 60, but she looks like she's 100 in this terrible makeup, but then also in like the trendy, like, quote unquote punk clothes that her character wears. And it's just, I think that she is supposed to be the comic relief of the movie, because I do think that it's trying to be funny. I think that they thought she was funny, but she's not.
At some point, it kind of becomes a wannabe road movie.
Oh, totally.
Where she's supposedly having some witty banter, some semi-flirtatious or clever chatter or whatever about, how wacky is the future now, you know, with this guy, Red Thorn or
Red Fern.
Red Band. Red Fern.
Red Man, like...
like a trailer.
The rapper, Red Man.
Big Red. I just want to call him Big Red.
He was so familiar to me, and I couldn't pinpoint anything that he was in, but he's been in
a million
every
things.
Production that's ever been made.
Like, when he dies, we should have done like this movie for him, honestly, because
he is working. Like, I would bet $5 that at this moment in time he is working. This guy is like, he's done so much stuff.
It's Richard E. Grant, and he does like 6 or 7 movies a year, you know? He's just a nonstop actor, and you'll recognize him, especially the older version of him.
Yeah, he's handsome. He's got like kind of these icy
great
blue eyes. Yeah, very handsome.
And honestly, I thought he was doing great in this movie. With the ridiculousness, like he kept up his sort of, I guess, supposed to be 14th or 17th century American accent or whatever like that.
Yeah.
He kept it up. I thought he was on point. I thought, you know, this could have been really hammy and really stupid, but he played it very, very straight, and it worked.
Totally. He was supposed to be the straight man to her comic stuff, but she's not funny.
Yes.
She's just a terrible person. Like, that just being a terrible, insufferable person doesn't make it funny. But no, he did great. Like, he's like this, colonial witch hunter or whatever, like dressed in furs. And it's totally like a fish out of water thing. Like, he comes to modern day 1980, whatever this is, and doesn't assimilate at all. Like, she never puts him in normal clothes, or like he's like boarding planes in his furs. Like,
yeah,
it's hilarious.
It's
but you're
so
right.
funny.
But he's great. He does a great job. And I read that initially he read for the Warlock and Julian Sands read for the good guy, but the director decided he wanted them in the opposite roles. And I think that they both do a great job. The basic premise is it starts in colonial America somewhere, Boston presumably, and there's this Warlock. He doesn't have a name. In fact, I don't remember if the word warlock is ever mentioned in the movie, because they always just refer to him as a witch.
Yeah.
These Puritans have this warlock, like, chained up in a really uncomfortable position.
God.
Like in an attic. Like he's...
I wouldn't even want to be in that position for 2 minutes,
I couldn't
let
get
alone
in that position. Like he's standing up, but like his wrists are chained to his ankles or something. So like he can't stand erect.
Bent
like, he's
over.
Constantly, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just one of the first images we saw. Like, that looks terrible. But at the last minute, like an evil storm wisps him away to modern day, and then eventually this guy, the witch hunter or whatever, Redfern, follows him there. I don't know how. I don't remember.
How does that happen? I don't know if it's ever explained. It's just like
they travel in tornadoes.
Yeah, I know, tiny little animated tornadoes. That it's like the Wizard of Oz. There's such care taken to show the disappearance of the Warlock. He's up there. There's this big storm that brews. Redfern goes running back in there, and the room that the Warlock is in is like spinning, and he just vanishes, disappears. Redfern's like kind of yelling, and then present day flashes to, and there's a similar storm, and there's a tiny little tornado going down the street
that crashes right into this very specific house where Laurie Singer lives. I think that she's just like a boarder. This is one of the only things that I remember about this movie, and I think it's because my little gay self must have recognized something in this guy. Like, I think she's renting a room from this guy named Chaz, who they make a point. I mean, he's obviously gay, but they also make a point out of saying it later. But like, because he gets killed. But a cop says something like, "You said your roommate was gay," and she says, "Yeah, gay, not queer. There's a difference. Is there? What?" Like, I must have missed that day of the seminar.
I'm not sure what she meant by that. I was scratching my head at that line as well. And then it was like the cop was like, "Well, can you give me a list of his lovers? Because maybe, one of them were the ones who murdered him." I thought, oh, this is so...
I don't know.
quaint.
It was, it was very, very 80s. I don't know. But the fact that there was a gay character in here, and then the Warlock just coincidentally tornadoes into their house, and they're not, like, they put him up for the night, like,
yeah,
and then
before he even wakes up.
I know.
Yeah. You should take him to the hospital, I'm afraid, but yeah, go on.
Whatever. I mean, if a guy tornadoes into your house, what are you going to do? I don't know.
What are you going to do? It's too late. It's too late to call the police. You got dinner's already burning on the stove. Just
So the next day she goes to work or something, and Chaz, the nice man who allowed the Warlock to stay in his house overnight, is just like in the kitchen cooking, and the Warlock comes in and talks to him, and it's kind of flirty. And then...
Yeah, is it though?
Well, I feel like Chaz thinks it's kind of flirty, and I don't think that he has any reason to not.
Jeez Louise, he's scared. I'm heading out in a little while. I'll give you a lift downtown. What are you looking at? Oh, my ring. I'm a Scorpio. Or I was. I don't believe in astrology much anymore.
Truly.
I don't think anyone does. I mean, it's just so 60s.
Chaz has no sense of awareness at all. That's what makes this whole scene cringy. I was very uncomfortable watching the scene, and it had nothing to do with any potential sexual content. It was just what Chaz was doing and what Julian Sands' character were doing were just at complete odds with one another.
I was just worried for him.
He's being super friendly to him, and he's being nice. He's just being a charming guy. I'd like to be in the room with this guy. He's cooking lunch. He's being chatty. He's cool. And the Warlock has just got this smug look on his face like, I'm about to murder you, and barely responds to anything that Chaz is saying. And when he does, it's creepy. And he just kind of keeps going.
Chaz is wearing this ridiculously large ring that's like a... It's like one of those...
It's like got a baby scorpion
it's like one of those
embedded in
freaking paperweights with a scorpion in it, but as a ring.
Yeah.
And the Warlock, admires it, and then Chaz is like, well...
Chaz starts talking about it it's
he's
really
like,
special.
he's like, I'd let you try it on, but I broke this finger, and now I can't take it off. So the Warlock just picks up a big knife, chops his finger off to take the ring. This is a ring that looks like it came out of a gumball machine.
Yeah.
And I have no idea why. The Warlock wears rings. I guess he's just a ring enthusiast.
He's like a ring collector. You might know. The only thing I could think of, because it's pretty obvious if you're even half paying attention, because even mention is made of it, I believe, when they're carrying him around. Chaz is like, oh, don't drop it there. This table's 100 years old or whatever. And you look in their house, and it looks like everything he owns is an antique. Obviously, it needs to be for the way that the plot point. But
it's so contrived and stupid.
I imagined this was like an antique ring that maybe was even from that same village that he recognized.
Yeah, but that's never told to us.
It's never said. It never comes up again.
No.
The ring's not magical.
No.
Nothing.
But then the way he kills Chaz, but the way, I was reading in the trivia, it's funny, he knocks him down in front of a door, and then he picks him up, and he knocks his head on the door, which was unscripted, and I just, knowing that it was going to happen, I was watching for it, and the actor, when his head gets hit on the doorknob, goes, ow. Which I just thought was really funny. Well, that's what you would do. It's funny. But then
my gosh.
I remember this. This is one of the only things. This and the Mary Warnov scene are the only things that I remembered. The way that the Warlock kills him is that he makes out with him.
Yes.
He grabs him by the face and puts a big kiss on him. So big that he bites his tongue off. Now, I understand that this is predatory and vicious. Super homoerotic.
Yeah.
And it had to be intentionally so. I don't think that I had ever seen two men kiss like that on TV before.
Right.
And they're I think that's the thing. They're not kissing.
No.
But that's sure what it looks like.
This was the one scene that we talked about a lot. And it wasn't even about the homoeroticness of it when we were kids. It was about how cool is it that he bit his tongue out. Because we'd never seen that in a horror movie before. Character just biting somebody else's tongue out.
It was gross. I felt bad for poor Chaz. He was such a super nice guy.
He was a nice dude.
Yeah.
But also, he just falls down dead immediately. I think there'd be more to it than that, but yeah.
And then, God, I don't know. Then I guess, the Warlock goes to see Mary Warnov, who is a channeler. She channels spirits or whatever. Mary Warnov, of course, we've seen in a bazillion things. She, I think, she was in the beginning of Chopping Mall, I think. She was in that alien that came through the satellite movie. We've seen her in a bazillion things. I always enjoy seeing her. I guess she's a psychic, I guess, or a clairvoyant or something. And the Warlock comes to see her, and he's like, I need to channel a spirit. She's like, well, I only do group sessions. He's like, no, seriously, I need to. She's like, okay.
He hands her a crystal. I'm not sure what that had to do with anything.
I don't either. And she's like, who do you want to talk to? And he's like, did he say his dad?
He said he has many names. He's my father. He goes by many names, yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of the family or my dad.
And she's like, well, I'm going to need one of the names. And he's like, Zamil. I don't remember. I looked it up. It's
Zamian. Damien with a Z.
Zamil. I looked it up. It means told by God. I don't know where it comes from. It may just come from this movie. What do I know? She is a scam artist, and she's like, I am Zamiel. What do you want to ask me? And he's like, well, let's just wait until the real Zamiel comes. She's like, what do you mean? And then, and then her face turns all demony.
Changes. Oh, it's cool. I love this part.
This is my
favorite
scary part. I looked it up. You can just watch this part on YouTube, and that's all you need to see of this movie.
Yeah.
This is a great scene. He talks to Satan, I guess, in her body. Did you read about how this scene was supposed to go?
Oh my God. I cannot even imagine.
I so wish this existed. So, I need to see this.
They shot it. Yeah, the actual thing's never been released, but you can actually see, because a clip from this does show up in the original trailer from the movie. What happens is she ends up basically frozen, tears her shirt open to reveal her breasts. If you look at this, I've seen some bits from the trailer. It's like he's just lingering over her, and he's saying, I am Satan's spawn or something, and he's looking at her, and it's like she has ice crystals and stuff on her face, and her eyes are closed. But what happens is that the devil's eyeballs are supposed to emerge from her nipples, which then he kicks her over and stomps her chest to pop the eyeballs out so that he can take them.
Yeah.
What kind of crack-smoking writing session brought that on? That's right up there with Linnea Quigley's lipstick in the nipple for no apparent reason.
But it's
Night of the Demons.
It sounds great. I wanted to see that.
Well, it sounded exciting.
Instead, he just Satan's like,
do what I demand. Bring together all three parts, and you shall be
Him.
the one begotten Son. Let my eyes guide thee.
so he cuts her eyes out.
And then he literally has these tiny little eyes
That he
that sit
has
upright in his hand.
that he has for a while, and they're like a compass, I guess. They point him in the right direction. But at some point, doesn't he just he's fighting and they get dropped on the ground, and then we never see them again? Is that right?
It's pretty accurate. Yeah, things kind of do
he
get
has
dropped.
them for a while. Everything gets dropped. This dumbass Cassandra, Laurie Singer, she talks to the cops, and I think she's supposed to be the fun smartass, but she just seems like a bitch.
Yeah.
She's totally self-involved.
She's not fun.
No, she doesn't care about anybody but herself.
Well, they're also building her up to be, again, in a better movie, there would be a character arc here, right? Where she's getting what she deserves. She's obsessed about her looks. She's obsessed about being young. I mean, it's just thrown at you in your face to a hilarious degree. There's a point where she is so busy putting makeup on in the car that she almost hits an old lady driving across the street. And after she slams on the brakes and waits for this old lady to come by, he's like, "Get out of my way, you old person, honk, honk, honk," and then continues.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh my God, she says, don't ever let me get old.
Yeah. So that then when, of course, she gets her curse, and she's cursed with that very thing, and I suppose afterwards, once she's relieved, she's supposed to be better. I don't know.
I think she's supposed to be kind of redeemed at the end because she.
But it doesn't.
So the Warlock shows back up and they fight. As it turns out, by sheer coincidence. So what the Warlock needs is the Grand Grimoire, which is the most evil of all witchy books or something.
This is what the devil sent him here to gather. Yes.
It's not just in one place. It's been torn up into 3 pieces, and he's got to find all 3 pieces. And it just so happens that one of those pieces is in Chaz's coffee table.
Yeah.
What the fuck? This is so stupid.
I think the devil had to know that, or else he wouldn't have sent him there, crashing through their window.
All right.
But the devil doesn't tell you anything outright, right? He doesn't say, all right, check the coffee table, then go to this barn, and then, the last one is buried with this guy. It's like, take the eyes out of this woman, and I'm going to use them to guide you around. And then, like you said, he crashes in. He wakes up. He's on the run. He's out with his eyeballs trying to find the next place. In the meantime, this guy, Red Thorn. God, what is it?
Red Fern.
Red Fern.
Like where
the
red fern
grows. Okay. So Red Fern just shows up.
He just shows up to smack her.
Yeah.
He shows up and smacks her, and I was like, finally, jeez.
She needs it. and this is one of those movies where it's just the characters end up taking so much on faith. Like, after a very short period of time, she's totally on board with what this guy's doing.
Well, she has to. She doesn't have any choice.
Well,
because she's going to die. She's cursed. The Warlock cursed her.
Come on, if a random person showed up in your house the way that he shows up in the house, saying the things that he said, and she is just like, well, let me just slink around the corner here. Oh, let me, lock myself in the bathroom. Let me just...
Oh, yeah.
No, she'd be running out the door, calling the cops.
Well, she did call the cops.
Well, she did, but... She bails him out the next day.
Well, because she aged 20 years overnight. Like, she's probably thinking, that's kind of weird.
He sets up the what's it called? The compass, the witch compass.
The witch compass.
Whose idea was this?
I don't know. Compass. It's all so it's all dumb, and it the Red Fern, shows up at her house, but then she has him arrested, and then that's when the Warlock comes back because she can't pack fast enough. Like, even the cops are like, lady, if I were you, I'd get out of here. And she's like, you know what? Time me. And then she takes for frickin' ever, and the Warlock shows up, puts the curse on her, so she has to go get him. And then, you're right, it just becomes a buddy road movie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even... Are they following him? Well,
he makes a big deal out of this compass because they got to get blood, drip it on there to make it work, and it swings around.
Get blood out of the vacuum cleaner bag.
Yeah,
God.
And it swings around at points. But this compass is like a meticulous thing you got to set up. It takes them like 5 minutes to set up, and they just got it balanced on this thing.
Yeah, but then later anything pointy will work.
Right? Exactly. Well, apparently it was supposed to be a rooster chained up in a circle or something like that, but they ditched that idea and went for this compass thing instead. So they get in the car and they just start driving down a highway. And I'm thinking, where are they going? How did they know? Did I miss something? Did I miss some dialogue? He just randomly stops the car, sets up the compass again. Oh, okay, it's that way. And then they just start driving again off in the same direction they were going, which is in that general vicinity. Like, this is a very inefficient way to find this dude.
Yeah.
Only later, for, again, reasons unexplained, because it's not like they have an epiphany or anything, we now see that compass thing, like, suspended inside the car with a bunch of janky, like, string and rope and chains and things, so that it's kind of floating there so that they could, I guess, sort of follow it in real time, right? Like a little GPS.
Oh, my God. Oh boy. Meanwhile, the Warlock's just, I don't know, making his way across the country. I don't know where he's going. I guess the eyes are leading him.
But he gets a little help. Because for some reason he's walking across the desert and just happens upon a little boy.
Hello, little boy.
Just strikes up a little conversation with him, plays his little electronic game with him. I'm like, where in the world is this going? Here's the church in the background, and he's like, what is that singing coming from? Oh, it's the church. And why don't you go to church? Oh, no, my daddy and I, we don't believe in church. I don't go to church, yada, yada. Oh, that's interesting. And then the boy says something about, what are you? And he says, I'm a witch. And he says, no, only girls are witches. And besides, where's your broom? Oh, witches need brooms to fly. Don't you know that? And he says, well, I don't need a broom to fly. And he says, really? Well, how do you fly then? And then it cuts away. And then it cuts to...
Within an hour, Within an hour, this little boy has been murdered, boiled, turned into a potion. The townspeople believe that
It's a
he was
coyote.
attacked by coyotes, so they have put together a coyote hunt. Like, I honestly, like, I think
It's
this
so
is
clunky.
It's in a matter of seconds.
Because it's like the next place that Cassandra and Redfern pull over is like a gas station, just a random gas station down the road. And there's some talk about, what is that? Oh, a coyote. Oh, well, a coyote came and killed a boy. Oh, and then they walk over and they see this coyote. Like, well, that was a nice coincidence that they happened to stop there.
They're just on his tail.
Redfern immediately assumes that he thinks this had something to do with the Warlock, and so he runs up to the woman and asks her frantically, was your son baptized? And no, he wasn't baptized. And he's like, oh my God. And he goes back to Cassandra and tells her he can fly now because witches need the boiled fat of a unbaptized child in order to fly. And it's so clunky how this is all delivered.
And it's not even, like, it's...
This is supposed to be shocking.
That scene between Julian Sands and that kid was fine. Like, there are moments that are fine. It's just, it's not interesting. I was bored. Like, who cares? Like, and then they just keep going on this road trip for a long time. Like, the Warlock stops at an Amish family's house, and apparently part of the book is there. And the Amish dad recognizes all the signs, like the horse is sweaty and the cream turned sour, and oh, there must be a witch, so I'm gonna paint a pentagram on the barn.
Right.
And then
He goes through all the trouble of painting a pentagram on the barn, but he knows the problem is in his attic. And
right, just so that Redfern and What's-Her-Butt can see it from the road and be like, the witch must be there. Yeah, and then there's a big battle.
Oh, dude, the battle was the funniest part. I laughed out loud at this battle.
My favorite part was when he lassoed him.
Yes.
The Warlock is flying now. And it's all wire work, and I am a big fan of wire work. So
it's not all wire work. Some of it is very much...
yeah, some of it is.
Very poor animation.
That's true. But my favorite... Redfern has a whip that he uses sometimes.
Like Indiana Jones.
And he lassoes the Warlock, and so the whip is tied around the Warlock's ankle, and the Warlock is flying. Redfern is holding onto it, getting dragged. It's like a cartoon. It's like a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
It is very much
hilarious.
Like that. Oh, my favorite part. Well, the Warlock kind of looks over. I think it's while he's still up on the barn. He looks over and he does a little twitchy thing with his finger and makes a weather vane that has a pointy end to it pop off of the barn and go straight down, just missing him between his legs, Redfern's legs on the ground, which Redfern then picks up, and while the Warlock is flying around and almost about to get away, he manages to throw like a javelin.
Yeah.
And it hits the Warlock in the back, and it is so funny because the shot is just this javelin going in his back close up, and he goes, ah! And then flutters to the ground.
Yeah. And then they get him tackled on the ground, and Redfern's like, take his shoes off. I'm like, why? What are you doing? That I guess the way that you bind witches is by putting thumb screws and toe screws.
Yeah.
On them. Well, I don't know.
It's not really established, but yeah.
There's one part where they only get it half on. They get one of his thumbs screwed to one of his toes, but then he gets away and he's just hopping away on one leg. Oh my God. So funny.
Oh.
And then, I don't know, there's the train chase, and she gets the...
At what point in the movie does she spit the pennies out of her mouth?
Oh my God. I don't even know. Is that now or later?
I think it's later.
That's now. No, it's already happened. Redfern, he could just be f***ing with them, and I think that would be even funnier.
He might have been, right? This will shut you up.
Yeah, he tells her she has to hold these pennies between her
teeth.
Lips. That's gonna protect her from the... And at one point, she's like, be careful.
At one point, she has 4 lines that she has to deliver with these pennies between her lips. And as each line goes by, it gets more and more stupid looking.
I don't get it. If this thing is so bitch into witches, why would you leave a page? Even just a page.
Oh God, yeah,
And
that's
then-
around this point. I forgot about that.
No, she's got these in her mouth even beyond into the train chase scene, because eventually she runs off with a hammer, and she's told to hammer his footprints.
Yeah.
The Warlock is on a train, just sitting in a train car, I guess, gathering himself, and she hammers some nails into footprints that she comes across in the dirt, which makes him in pain in one foot and in pain in another foot, and then. Apparently he has a head print? I don't know. Did he fall face first into some dirt or whatever?
That's what it looks like. I didn't understand this either, though, because, like, she's nailing his feet, but then he picks up a board and puts his feet on the board, and then it doesn't...
That blocks
her
it?
nailing doesn't work anymore. Like, is it like a magic guard?
I don't know. That was weird.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. Then they fly to Boston, and the Warlock flies in the cargo hold. I also love that sometimes when there's nothing else going on, he just does like fancy light magic to amuse himself and us, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So like he's sitting in the cargo hold just like making lights with his fingers and stuff, and they get to Boston and they are looking for the last part of the book, and they talk to some priest, and the priest is like, well, we used to have it here, but it's not here anymore. And I don't even remember. They figure out that it's in some graveyard, right?
Yes.
And the Warlock is, of course, like right on their tail. And
what's this thing? He's like, don't worry because it's holy ground. He cannot set foot on holy ground, so we'll be safe in the graveyard, and if the Grimoire is there, all the better. And then she's like, well, how are we going to know if it's holy ground? And he takes that pointy thing that he's been carrying around with him the whole time, the weather
vane. This is a 7-foot tall weather vane that he's not only carrying around with him, but that he brought on the plane.
Yeah.
And the stewardess is like, can I take that for you, sir? Like, what?
It's supposed to be funny, but...
I understand that things were different pre-9/11, but they were never that different.
No, you're right. You had you could only get like a knife that was less than like 4 inches long or something like that on the plane.
Then again, people were also smoking on the plane. So I guess a lot of things have
I actually
changed.
liked all the airport stuff, especially how she could thwart the credit card scanning process by distracting the woman.
Oh my
Just unplugging the credit card machine.
God, that was the stupidest thing. Like, what are we supposed to believe the outcome of that is? So she goes to the ticket booth, and the lady's computer is literally like a gas station credit card swiper.
Right.
Like it's super, super old. And she swipes the credit card and then gets distracted, and Laurie Singer just unplugs it from the back. Now, first of all, wouldn't the first thing you would do if it stopped working check to be like it's just one plug? It's not like we're talking about like today's computers where there's a bazillion wires. No, there's just one cord, and she just pulled it out. Secondly, are we then to believe that the lady's like, "Ah, crap, the machine doesn't work. Yeah, you can just go for free." Like, is that what we're supposed to believe?
I suppose that's exactly what we're supposed to believe. I don't know if this inspired, thousands of youth from the 90s to try to thwart credit card machines this way. I can't imagine.
Well, at some point, she also hands Redfern her credit card and says, "Here, this is for gas. Just give it to the guy. And when he gives you a piece of paper, just scribble any name on it. They never check. It doesn't matter."
That bit's true.
Yes, children of the 80s. That's how credit cards work. It's just free money. Just scribble a name. No big deal. Whatever. Okay, so they end up in this graveyard.
He stabs this into the ground.
Oh, yeah.
And for a second, it starts smoking and the ground kind of quivers a little bit. And he's like, all right, that means it's holy ground.
Why?
Well, yeah.
So weather vanes make sacred ground smoke?
This made no sense.
It made absolutely no sense.
They know that the bad guy's nearby because the weather vane is laying on top of one of the graves, and it starts spinning around just like that complicated contraption earlier.
She sees a sign that talks about development or something, and she's like, "Oh crap!" The grave that they find is marked with a pentagram, and it turns out it's his grave, which is very unsettling to him.
He cannot...
Like, it's a whole It's a whole deal.
He's been able to handle so much up to this point, but now he never imagined this would happen, and it freaks him out.
And he can't look at it. And again, I think this is supposed to be funny.
Oh, God.
Like, she opens it up, and I guess the corpse is holding the book, and she has to, like, break fingers off to get it out, and it goes on for too long, and it's never funny. And
the dialogue here is so stupid. You better not look, and he's turned the other way, and then she opens it, and she's like, oh, I knew it. And he's like, what is it? She's like, nope, you better not look. Nope, you better not. And then he looks, and she goes, oh, blazes. Well, what did you expect? I told you not to look, and you did. How dumb can you be?
I know, it's really bad.
God.
It's awful. God. As it turns out, his grave is not on consecrated ground because it's been moved.
Right, because through the graveyard renovation project that she...
It's been moved 20 yards to the left and is no longer...
Right. And somehow it's not consecrated anymore. I don't know what that means. I just thought maybe the very act of, putting graves on ground made them consecrated, but apparently not. But because they poked their stick in on that side, they can see it has no effect, and therefore it's unconsecrated. Which, just take those pages to the other side. Just hang out there for a while, or bury them or something.
Right. Just hocus pocus it. Just go jump in one of those exhumed graves. He can't get you,
Yeah, you're done.
Whatever. But anyway, the Warlock shows up, and Redfern and Cass, they split the pages that they found between them, and they run off. But the Warlock gets her, and I guess for revenge, stabs her in the feet?
Yeah. This was so dumb. Of all the things he could do to this woman, he's got her in a very awkward and difficult to maintain position where she's lying on her back. He's got his foot kind of on her neck. He's got her other leg in the air, leaving her other leg free to kick him, but she doesn't. He has pulled off her shoe, and he has a little nail that he's poking in her foot.
And
oh, God.
We missed what surely was my favorite part. At some point when they're talking to the priest, Redfern gets really heated about why it's so important that they get the book and keep it from him, because the whole thing is if he gets the book and he puts it all together, it will reveal God's true name. And if the Warlock speaks the name backwards, then it will reverse creation. And when Redfern is explaining this, he says something about Satan's farting hole. Did you hear?
I did.
Oh, and I was only half paying attention at this point, and then I was like, and Satan's farting hole. I'm like,
Wait a minute.
That doesn't sound good. Oh gosh, I don't know. So they fight him. Redfern's he's like, I challenge you to a fight, but with no magic and no weapons. And so they fight for a little while.
It's so stupid. He puts the pages on the ground, and then he's like, here, go take them. But you can't use magic, and you can't use this, and you can't do that. And the Warlock just goes along with it, okay.
Okay. until he's bested, and then he's like, you know what, forget it, I'm using my magic.
But I don't even understand what happened in here. He's pressing the Warlock's face into the consecrated ground, I guess, which is, really making him burn up. But then the Warlock tosses something into his mouth, and then he starts puking violently, and he says, well, I guess feels like the rules have changed. And I'm thinking, I don't even know what these rules are. I can hardly tell what's happening here. Is this magic? Is this the consecrated ground? Why is he able to walk on the ground all of a sudden with no issues? He wasn't even supposed to be able to set foot on it, but it's burning his face. But now this guy's magic puking.
Well, and so then the Warlock says some mumbo jumbo words, and the book comes together. And the big supernatural storm rolls in, and God's name appears on the pages, and we see it mostly happening, and I thought that we were going to actually get to see it. And so I was like, oh, what's God's name? And it was coming together. I swear to God, I thought that it was going to say Kevin, and I'm like, that is so fucking funny. Like, the big mystery is like, we have to figure out what's God's name. And it's Kevin. We don't actually see what it is.
No.
But the Warlock gets all cocky. Is like, ha ha, God, I know your name.
And I'm
going to say it. Here any minute, I'm going to say it.
You get ready. 3, 2. Don't think I'm not going to say 1.
Yeah. And then Cass jumps up behind him and injects him in the neck. Now, we failed to mention, though we were beaten over the head with it in the beginning, that she's diabetic. And so she has to give herself insulin injections. We are beaten over the head with that in the first 10 minutes of the movie, and then it doesn't really come up again until now.
Yeah.
But she got salt water, I guess, because he threw her in the sea,
lake.
I guess. I don't know.
It's just salt water. The sea, I guess you're right.
And she filled up her syringes with salt water. She injects him in the neck.
And salt is,
Witches don't like salt, right? So he bursts into flames and he rises into the air and he's burning and then he just falls dead. And Redfern stomps on his skull, and the supernatural storm goes away, and then
there's like this weird, almost romantic moment between them. I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
There was a whole deal about how he had like a wife, and the Warlock had killed his wife, and he's really sensitive about that. And then here, just out of nowhere, though she has been nothing but a pain in the ass, he's like, I feel like if we'd known each other at a different time, it'd be different.
She's almost like earlier on, she's almost like a petulant girlfriend because, she gets that bracelet back from the Warlock so that she can stop aging.
And then she doesn't care.
And she does that all on her own, and she springs in on him, and she's like, hey, here I am. And he's like, oh, thank God you're back, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, gets that pouty look on her face like, didn't you notice my new haircut? Why didn't you say anything about it? And then, like, super bitchy. I think that was supposed to be funny, too, and it...
I know,
work.
this end is so dumb that it really kind of makes me mad. Like, he kisses her on the eyes. Okay, whatever. Fine. But then he, says something, and she closes her eyes as it appears that he's going in for a kiss. But then he disappears and turns into a tornado.
A tornado.
And the tornado flies over to his grave, and the tornado engraves a message to her on his grave and says something like, I'll always remember you, or something fucking stupid like that. And then she's like, oh, that's so sweet. And then she looks over, it's like, shoot, the book. Because the book is still there.
I thought that was
funny,
funny,
and now it's all together.
Yeah.
So she takes it out and buries it on a salt flat, which in a different movie I would find really hilarious. But I was so done with this movie. I'm like, Jesus, just be over. And then I was even mad at her. Like, I actually thought that it was, again, in an actually funny movie, I would have thought that it was really funny that the last thing that we see is her burying this book in an enormous salt flat. I thought that would be funny. But it's not a funny movie, and so I was just pissed at her. I'm like, oh, really? Like, you're just gonna leave it all together and bury it 1 centimeter below the ground? I hated her. I hated her in this movie. And that's it. And that's the end.
Is she in the sequel?
No, thank God. The sequel focuses around two, there's young people, like teenage people, and then there's a group of older people, and some of them are like magic and psychic, and the Warlock comes back, and he's not interested in the book anymore, but there are these 5 crystals that he has to get.
Oh, God. It's like a video game. Get the 3 pieces of the book together before midnight on the second moon. We need 5 crystals.
Man. But no, it's the sequel, seriously, I'm an hour into it. It's just much more fun. It's still a bad movie, but it's way, way more fun.
The writer of this movie is no slouch. It's kind of weird, but it is one of the first movies that he wrote. Just after this movie came out, I believe, his script for The Fugitive with Harrison Ford got picked up. And the writer is David Twohy. And since then,
he's done a ton of stuff.
Yeah, G.I. Jane, The Chronicles of Riddick, the whole Riddick series or whatever, Pitch Black, The Arrival, Terminal Velocity, and Waterworld.
The director has done lots of stuff that we like too. I want to say maybe he did House and
yes, Steve Miner.
Yeah. So, there's good people behind it. And in terms of quality of filmmaking, it's okay. Like, it's not terrible. We've definitely seen worse. We've 100% seen way worse movies than this. I tell you, Laurie Singer ruined this movie for me. She was so terrible in it that it made the rest of the movie virtually unsalvageable.
I think you're right about that.
But the character, the Warlock character, I liked him. I will also say that the sequel gets schlockier and it's more like Wishmaster. Like, I just saw a scene where the Warlock, in order to get one of these crystals, has to, get it because he can't just take them. They have to be willfully given to him.
Oh.
And so, he he goes to, this museum, and the guy's like, well, I'm not going to sell you this stone. And he's like, well, if you give me the stone, I'll give you the most amazing piece of art your museum has ever seen. And then the guy gives him the stone, and he turns the guy into this grotesque, Picasso-esque sculpture. Right. So very Wishmastery, but still more fun. And it really seems like in the sequel, Julian Sands is chewing it up more. Like, he's having more fun with it. He's more playful with the character, which I really enjoy. So if you listeners are only going to watch one, if you're just going to have a moment to appreciate Julian Sands, I would just go straight for the sequel. You don't need to know anything about the original. He's an evil warlock. That's all you need to know.
I mean, for what it's worth, I think he's great in this movie. He's playing exactly what he's supposed to play. He's the evil warlock, and he looks good. He doesn't have, I think if you probably add up all the scenes he's in, it's relatively small, right?
Yeah, I think Redfern is in it more than the warlock.
For sure. And whatever he's in, is often special effects heavy. So he's flying in front of green screen or something. You can kind of barely see him. There's not a ton of acting going on, But yeah, it's our way of paying tribute to the career of this lovely man who once again was taken from us too soon, but did leave behind a huge body of well-respected work.
Yeah, very cool guy. Again, he was missing for so long. We talked about this. Yeah. When we heard that he was missing, we're like, oh man, there's going to be a tribute episode coming. And it's a bummer because he really was a cool guy. It's too bad that he's gone. But like you said, and like we always say, how fortunate these people are to have had the opportunity to leave behind such a legacy. We don't all get that opportunity. So, a life well lived. Good for him.
Yep. Well, thank you again for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it with a friend. You can find us online just by Googling Two Guys and a Chainsaw Podcast. Go to our Twitter feed, our Facebook page, become a patron, patreon.com/Chainsaw Podcast. And we have an Instagram and a YouTube channel as well. Any one of those places, tell us your favorite Julian Sands movie and give us plenty of ideas for films we should cover in the future. Until then, I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
With Two Guys and a Chainsaw.